All right, what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to run an event study in financial markets from start to finish using the software Eventus. Okay, so in class we've talked about estimating abnormal returns, cumulative abnormal returns. The idea here is we want to evaluate whether some event causes a change in stock prices that is in excess of an entire market-wide movement. I hope that makes sense. Let me explain econometrically what we're going to do here, right? So we're going to estimate the following linear regression. We're going to have some return for some stock I on day T, and we're going to estimate the following regression, where we're going to have an intercept, a slope, and where we're going to regress the individual firm stock returns on the market returns. So the model that we look at is going to be this here. We're going to estimate this model, and you'll remember from your econometrics class that everything in the error term must be orthogonal or independent to the independent variable, the return on the market. Okay, so if I use some, let's suppose that I'm going to estimate this function, right? I'm going to get an intercept estimate, a parameter estimate for my slope coefficient, and then using some algebra I can create an estimate for this error term which is independent of the market-wide return, right? So using some algebra, let me say that E hat for firm I and time period T is now equal, I'm just using some algebra here, after I've estimated the model and got parameter estimates for A and B, I can say is equal to the return, the individual return for the stock minus A hat minus B hat times the market-wide return. Okay, so what happens is this error term now becomes the abnormal return. This is the return for the firm that is independent of market-wide movements. You can think of this as being the firm-specific return or the abnormal return or the excess return in excess of the market. Okay, so what's going to happen is I'm going to use this software. I'm going to estimate this regression for a period of time. I'm going to get these parameter estimates, A hat and B hat. I'm then going to estimate the abnormal return using these parameter estimates, just using the algebra that I've shown here. And then we're going to add up these abnormal returns for various event windows surrounding different events. And this is how you would go ahead and conduct an event study in finance surrounding an event. So for those of you looking to do event study research, you have to come up with a really incredibly important idea to think about how stock prices change. I'm not going to come up with something that interesting. I'm going to look at let's look at oil companies surrounding the BP oil spill that happened in August, or in April rather, of 2010. Okay, so I want to see not necessarily how BP's stock price was affected when the oil spill happened in the Gulf of Mexico, but I want to see all other oil companies other than BP, how their stock prices responded to the BP oil spill. So we have some exogenous shock, some unforeseen shock, the BP oil spill. Let's see whether or not the BP oil spill actually increased stock prices for BP's competitors or decreased stock prices. On one hand, you can think that the BP oil spill maybe made all of BP's competitors more competitive, so that might increase the stock prices of BP's competitors. On the other hand, it might be true that that maybe the market started selling all oil companies because now they realized that these oil companies had more exposure to oil spills, something like that. Okay, so that's the test we're going to run. What happens to all oil companies other than BP surrounding BP's oil spill? The BP oil spill happened on April 10th, 2010, which actually was a Saturday. So the market didn't open until Monday, of course. So we're going to look at the event day of April. So April 12th. 2010 is going to be our event day. 2010. This is the day that that markets were open after the BP oil spill. So now we have to identify what stocks to look at, what firms, okay? So what I've done here is I've gone into just a website and grabbed the SIC codes. This is the Standard Industry Classification Code, okay? And the SIC code is going to tell me what firms might be oil companies. So if I look under here under the manufacturing tab, so SIC codes between 20 and 39, there's a whole bunch of different types of firms, and whatever research problem or whatever research you're looking at, you're going to look at what firms would be affected by the event that you're looking at. So I'm going to go here to SIC code 29. And I'm going to look specifically at the 4-digit SIC code. This is going to get me all publicly traded firms that engage in petroleum refining, which is going to be the competitors. I'm assuming that BP is going to have this 4-digit SIC code. Okay, so I need SIC code 2911. How do I get SIC code 2911? I'm going to go to Words, and we've talked in class about how you would get access to Words. So I'm going to go to CRISP, and under CRISP I'm going to pull the security files at the daily level, okay, and I'm going to put in my event day here. This is going to be April 12th, 2010. So all I need is April 12th, 2010 for both the date ranges here, okay. And I'm going to pull the entire database. Again, CRISP, the Center for Research for Security Prices. CRISP contains all publicly traded stocks that are listed on the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, and the American Stock Exchange. So this is a broad resource here that can get me all of the different stocks that I'm trying to get. So I'm going to pull the entire database, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in the SIC code. Let me grab the SIC code. Let me grab the ticker symbol and the company name. Again, this is going to pull in all publicly traded companies on my event date, which is April 12th, 2010. Let me just put that in a CSV file, and then when I hit Submit Query, Words is going to run this query, and it's going to give me the SIC code of all publicly traded firms. And recall that I need SIC code. SIC code 2911. Okay, so that's going to run a little bit. I've already actually run this query, and this is what it looks like. So it gives me a permanent number. This is a CRISP identifier. Of course, there's the ticker symbol. Here's the company name, and here's all of the various SIC codes. In fact, remember, I pulled this for 2010-04-12, so April 12th, 2010. And if I scroll down, you can see that the CRISP database covers 6,667 stocks that were publicly traded on one of those 3 exchanges. I've sorted this data by SIC code, and I'm going to scroll to the SIC code 2911. I'm almost there. Sorry, this is a little monotonous here. But you can see here's SIC code 2911, ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, Chevron, Sunoco. These firms are going to be BP's competitors. In fact, there you see ticker symbol BP. That's BP right there. So what I'm going to do here, in order to run Eventus, I need the CRISP permanent number. Okay, so I need the permanent number and the event day. All right. So so anyway, all I have to do here is then I just have to copy and paste the permanent number, the CRISP permanent number, and the event date around the oil spill. Give me a second here to scroll down. Okay, so let me just grab the permno here and the event day, and I'm going to highlight all of the stocks. It looks like there's about 22 stocks here. I'm going to copy those, And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste them in a text file. So I'm going to go down to, you can just grab like under your accessories, under your Windows accessories, you can grab a notepad. This is just a text file. I'm just going to copy and paste those. Now it's important to note, I don't want BP. I know BP stock price just got clobbered, and I don't want BP's stock price to drive all of the results when I take the mean CAR across these firms. And so what I want to do is I want to get rid of BP's stock price. So you can see that BP's permanent number is 29,890. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to get rid of that event for BP. Okay. So I'm going to copy and save this thing. I'll save this as an Eventus file here. I have to remember where I'm saving it. Of course, I'll replace it there. So this is my file that I'm going to upload to the software Eventus. Okay. So let me show you where the software is. Again, it's on Words. I'm going to go back here. Remember, we were just in Words to pull the SIC codes from CRISP. I'm going to go to Get Data. And you can see that we subscribe, the university here subscribes to Eventus. I'm going to click on Eventus. And I can run a basic event study. So I'm going to hit Daily, Basic Event Study. Okay. And all I need to do is I need to point Eventus to my file that I just created, that Eventus file. There it is right there. Okay, so Eventus file contains all of the CRISP permanent numbers of BP's competitors that have an SIC code of 2911 on that event day. Okay, and then I need to choose a market index. You'll recall I'm running this regression. In fact, I'm going to run this regression for an estimation period that occurs actually before BP's oil spill. I'll explain this in just a second, but I need to run this model here, and I need to specify what market return I want to use as my independent variable. Okay, I'm going to grab the CRISP equally weighted and the value weighted index. So basically, the CRISP equally weighted index is going to be the universe of stocks publicly traded on those three exchanges, the New York, NASDAQ, and American Stock Exchange. And it's just going to take the equally weighted return of all of those publicly traded stocks. In other words, I just add up the return and divide it by the number of stocks. I'm also going to include the value weighted market return, which basically takes the weighted average of all of the stocks where the weights are based on the market capitalization. Okay, so I've chosen my market index as my benchmark. Okay, and now what happens is I'm going to estimate my linear regression model for an estimation period that occurs before the event. Okay, so the idea here is there might be some bias if I estimate this model during the event. Does that make sense? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to estimate this model using maybe almost a year's worth of data prior to the BP oil spill. I'm going to get estimated parameters for A and B. And then after I have those estimated parameters, then I can estimate the abnormal return or that residual return that we've been talking about, which is going to be the firm specific return or the abnormal return in my CAR. Okay, so by default, Eventus tells me that I want to run this it's going to stop 46 days prior to the event. Which again is April 12th, 2010, and the maximum estimation length. These are all big stocks, and so the maximum estimation length is almost going to be a year's worth of data. There's about 250 trading days in a year, right? And I'm going to basically run that linear regression model for a year prior to BP's oil spill, and I want that regression model to run for data that is about 46 days. That's about 2 months worth of trading days prior to BP's oil spill. Okay. All right. I'm going to estimate this thing using OLS, ordinary least squares. Okay. And now I can choose. So by default, it will show me when I run this in Eventus, it's going to show me the 61-day period surrounding the BP oil spill. But I might want alternative event windows. I might want day -5 to day +5. That's going to be the 11-day period surrounding BP's oil spill. Maybe -3 to +3, a 7-day period. -1 to 1, a 3-day period. And then I want to see what happens on the trading day. So on day 0, that's the April 12th, 2010. Maybe I'll do a 2-day period post the BP oil spill. And you have 6 options here. You can look at various event windows here. So now I'm going to come down here, and it's going to tell me I can select a whole bunch of different tests to determine whether or not the mean cumulative abnormal return is significantly different from 0. I'm going to select a bunch of these. The rank test, this cross-sectional standard error, that's kind of a traditional t-test that you'd run if you wanted to see whether or not the means are different than 0. Maybe I'll include the rank test, the jackknife, and the bootstrap test. You can select these. Again, there's question marks here so you can examine what these are. So if you click on this, it will explain what type of test is going to be conducted to determine the statistical significance. And then I'm just going to submit the query. So this is going to take a second to run, and as it takes a second to run, I've actually already ran this. So I'm going to go back over here. Let's just pretend that thing ran, and I'm going to click. Oops, actually, that's a different. That's my previous. Words query. So this is going to take a second to run. We actually have to let this thing run. It's going to take a second, and there you see it's popped up in a text file. I'm going to open that text file, and when I open that text file, it's going to provide total security events. In the request file was 22 stocks. It tells me my estimation period happened prior to the BP oil spill, and those are the stocks that are included in my analysis. And here is the raw return. It just gives me a whole bunch of data here. Equally weighted is the market index. The value weighted here is below it. Okay, and then here is the 61-day period. It reports the mean abnormal return. These aren't cumulative abnormal returns. This is just giving me that residual return along with the various test statistics. The mean abnormal return for each day in that 61-day period. And you can see something here. Look, returns, some are negative. 3 days before starts to get negative. But look at what happens here. All of a sudden, the returns become negative, and you start to see some significance here. You start to see some significance that happens in the days surrounding the BP oil spill. Okay, if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, here are the market model returns. Well, let's get it for the. Here are the market model returns. Okay, the market model returns for the time windows that I specified, those 6 time windows: the 11-day period, the 7-day period, the 3-day period, the 2-day post-event period, the 4-day post-event period, and the 6-day post-event period. And you can see that the mean cumulative abnormal return is negative and significant, particularly in the post period. In fact, no matter what I use, the Patel Z-score, the portfolio time series test, or the cross-sectional t-test, the test statistics are all significant. That's when I use equally weighted. The equally weighted market index. And when I use the value weighted market index, it's significant as well. In fact, look, again, this is the 22 firms that are not part of BP, right? These are BP's competitors. There was a significant negative price response in excess of the market that occurred in the days following the BP oil spill. So you have a 2-day return of negative 1.2%. Look, a 6-day return of negative 2.42%. These things are all significant. You can see the test statistics no matter what I use. Those suggest that in fact, BP's competitors also responded negatively to BP's oil spill. So that's how you can conduct some initial analysis to determine whether or not stock prices of BP's competitors responded to the oil spill. I want to do one other thing here. So instead of using the basic event study, what I want to do is it might be important to estimate and actually pull the database. So in other words, in what I just showed you, that already had calculated the mean return for those 6 event windows. What I might want to do is I want to get a database where the CARs are calculated for each individual stock. So if I go here to cross-sectional daily, okay, and I'm basically just going to estimate this again. Choose my file. Remember, it was a Ventus file. I'm going to use the crisp value weighted index as my benchmark. The benchmark type, I want the market model. I don't want to get mired in the weeds here, but I could use the raw return. The market adjusted return just takes the firm return minus the market return. This market model is the residual from the regression that we've been talking about the whole time. So this is the market model that we're running. Okay, so I'm going to use the market model. Again, I'll just leave the estimation period as the default. I'm going to use OLS. I'm going to put in my 6 event windows. I think that should be a 3. I can't remember what I did there. Okay. And then I'm going to run this. And what's going to happen is it's going to produce a SAS data set that has cumulative abnormal returns for each of those 22 firms. Okay. So that's going to be useful here. So give me a second while that runs. Let me go back here, and what's going to happen is I'm going to be able to replicate these mean cumulative abnormal returns as well as these test statistics once this thing runs. It's going to take a second. All right, so it's going to estimate those, and then it's going to spit them out into a data set as opposed to running the analysis already. And I'm going to, once it does spit it out into a data set, I'm going to talk about why that might be useful. So what you might want to do is once the cumulative abnormal returns are estimated, you might want to run a regression where you look at the CARs for, say, day 0 to day 1 for each of BP's competitors. And you're going to run a regression where you say maybe the size, you think the size of the firm. Right? So you might want to find what factors, firm-specific factors, are causing the stock price to decrease. Maybe it's the size of the firm, right? Maybe it's the revenue of the firm. Maybe the firms that have the most negative price response to BP's oil spill are the firms that are the largest or the market leaders, right? And so what we could do is once we've spit out a data set, we can then estimate a regression saying not only are the CARs negative, not only on average do BP's competitors drop in price, but also we can say what factors, stock-specific factors, are driving that decrease. Okay, so we'll run a cross-sectional regression maybe to figure this out. So let's see if that's done. So you can see here, there's the SAS data set. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to jump into SAS and I'm going to jump into SAS and pull this up. So I'm just going to save this as Eventus. Okay, and then I'm going to pull in SAS. And what I'm going to do here is, by the way, I have a whole bunch of SAS tutorials that you can look at if you want to figure out how to do this in SAS. But I'm going to create a new SAS data set pulling in the SAS data set that Eventus just kicked out. Let me create a library name. If you're not exactly sure what I'm doing here, I'd refer you to some of the SAS tutorials that I've done. So I'm going to point this SAS library to this directory, and I'm going to say data1 set a dot Eventus. And when I print this, here are the 22 firms. There's ExxonMobil, right? ConocoPhillips. These are all the same firms that are in there, and these are the different car windows. There's the car specifically for ExxonMobil, the cars, the second window, which was the 7-day event window surrounding the BP oil spill for Exxon. Does that make sense? So if I were to run, so I could run proc means data1, and I want the mean and the t-stat, and I'm going to run this for car window 1, car window 2, car window 3, and so on. And when I run these, you can see the mean returns and the t-stats. Now let's compare those two. Let's compare those to what we pulled in here already. Let me minimize this. So here's the market model abnormal returns for the valuated index. These I should nail these things here. Look, and sure enough, if I'm looking at car event window 4, that's day 0 to day 1. My return is negative. Sorry about that. My return is negative 0.121%. You can see that here. And my t-stat is negative 2.3. That cross-sectional standard error is the main t-stat, and you can see that I've nailed that standard error. Okay. So hopefully this gives you some idea of how to let Eventus go ahead and estimate the means and the test statistics, or if you wanted to create a cross-sectional data set and estimate the means and the t-statistics for yourself, you can do that as well. The benefit of estimating the cross-sectional data set, or having Eventus estimate the cross-sectional data set and spit it out, is then you can run some additional cross-sectional tests to see not only does the stock prices of BP's competitors decrease in price surrounding the BP oil spill, but what firm-specific factors drive that. So we could continue our research in doing that. So hopefully this has been helpful. Sorry the video was so long, but if you're interested in estimating cumulative abnormal returns and conducting event studies in finance using Eventus, hopefully this video is helpful.